everybody. This is Eric Vierthaler. Sit down by the fire. I'm here with my next special guest. Please introduce yourself.
Hey, how y'all doing? My name is Kenneth Appleton. I am a filmmaker and I'm an artist. Got a lot of projects I'm working on and definitely am ready to have a great chat with Eric right here.
Oh, yeah, certainly. And I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So, how about that you tell my guests what exactly is it that you do?
Like I said, I'm a filmmaker. I'm also an artist. I'm working on movies, working on music. Got a lot of stuff in the works. I have a film that's currently in production. I have a single that's coming out this month for Memorial Day. And, I have an album I'm trying to get together and have it ready for the fall. But right now, the main focus is to push the single and also to finish filming the movie.
Nice, awesome. So what exactly are these projects? So, with this movie, what's the genre?
Well, it's a coming of age film. It's a story we've heard before. It centers on, these three young men. They pretty much have a crazy night on the town and basically everything they learn from the situation. Don't want to give too much away, but, it's just a journey of self-discovery. And, it's been in production for a while now, and I'm trying to get it all finished probably by the end of either the end of this month or the middle of June.
Nice, awesome. Well, that all sounds very exciting.
Yeah, it's like, just taking it one day at a time. And I did some editing for certain scenes just yesterday, and I I'm doing everything from the writing, the directing, I'm even acting in it. And when I started doing some of the editing just yesterday, I looked at how the scenes are coming out, and I'm like, it's coming out really good. I'm really proud of it.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, and I mean, as far as the editing goes, I know this from experience. I mean, editing, it's definitely a very, very time-consuming process. And I mean, it mostly depends on the software that you use, but for the most part, yeah, I mean, it's definitely very time-consuming. What only takes like a few minutes or even a few seconds up on the screen actually can take about 30 or so minutes just to edit that in.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And that's basically exactly what it was yesterday. So, and it's one of those things where I just want to just do everything I can to, I feel like I'm doing great when it comes to telling stories. I want to do the best I can to put all this together and for it to come out looking good. And hopefully my plan is to make a classic with this movie. So
Nice, awesome. So yeah, and is this your first feature length film or what?
yes, this is my first feature length film. It's one of those projects that, it's been in development hell for, I would say, probably 2014. I
Oh,
remember
wow.
I remember when I actually wrote this as a play for school when I was in high school. It was about 2008, and I sent it to the theater department to see if I could get it into production. But basically, they just kind of like turned it down. So a few years later, I'm in college, and it's my senior year. I got a chance to meet Spike Lee. Well, I think this is my second time meeting him, and when I met him the second time around, he was pretty much giving us pointers about different ways we could, get started in the business, and as far as like, you know, whether we want to do short films or want to film something with your iPhone, and just listening to him inspired me to want to come back to this. So I decided, okay, and I'm going to rewrite this from a play to a screenplay. So after rewriting it as a screenplay, I graduated college, class Clark Atlanta, class of 2013. I thought to myself right after I got out of college, I was going to start filming this right away and start using my iPhone to do so. And I actually tried to get in production back then, but as time went on, I realized I wanted this to look much more official. So it kind of stayed in development hell for the longest. And then it got to a point where it's like, it's now or never. So I decided to actually get a good, well, decent camera and and from then on in, I just started shooting since last year, trying to finish by next month. And so far, I'm really glad that I did find the proper camera because it's definitely coming out much nicer now. So we're just going to see what's going to happen as far as where it goes. I mean, my goal is to just get this on television, and I'm not talking like streaming. I'm talking like actually getting an actual network, like Stars or Showtime. Because I remember at one point before Stars started producing all the television shows, we used to just play movies all the time, and there are a lot of movies that I watched um, that were independent films, and I'm talking about like low quality independent films. They probably used cameras that could have easily been like a home video cameras, not
Right.
necessarily all that advanced. Because some of these films came out in like 2000 in the 2000s, but they but I thought the quality, and I also thought the storytelling was really cool. And watching them via Stars, I said to myself, a lot of my actors are doing this out of a labor of love, and I wanted to figure out a way for them to be able to make residuals off their work and their performance and everything that they've done. And I really believe this has the makings of a classic and can actually do so. Because there are certain films that I remember during the 2000s that I remember I used to watch on television all the time. They'd come on all the time. And it's a perfect example of what I tell everybody all the time is that a film gained a cult following. It may not have did all that when it first came out, but its fan base grew since then. So I believe that it has the makings of that. I mean, you never know. It could blow up right away. I mean, look at what Sinners is doing. You never know where you think it goes. But for me, in anything you do, you always got to hope for the best, but you got to be able to expect the worst. So for now, my main goal is trying to finish the filming, put it all together, and try to do the best I can to make a great work of art. Because I always tell people all the time, when it comes to creating art, I know that this is going to be hard to believe for some people, but creating the art is not the hard part. Creating the art is the easy part. Promoting your art is the hard part. Actually getting it out there in the masses for the whole world to see. I mean, there are certain major studios who are able to make it look easy because they have so much more of a push. But when you don't have that, it's much harder. So, and also my advice to upcoming filmmakers is that once you create your art, depending on however way you want to put it out, but I would just say go on to as many platforms as you can, do as many interviews as you can to push your art. That way it has a better chance of either blowing up or just a better chance of gaining the film base. And I always say, just even if you just get one person watches your film or listens to your music and you become a fan, you did something. So you got to take it one day at a time. We're ready at one fan at a time. Because I remember certain artists admit when they first came in, there times they would do shows and there was like 2 or 3 people in the audience. They would perform like it was 300 or 3 million people in the audience. And as their fan base grew, they eventually did perform in front of 2-3 million people in the audience. So there you go.
Yeah, and yeah, like I met a lot of independent filmmakers like who will tell me that with the advent of the internet, with social media, that it actually has made promoting their films a lot easier because, just to imagine how much harder it was like back back before the dawn of the internet and social media, just how much harder that it was like for people to get the word of their film out there more.
Yeah, so yeah, and that's one of those things where it's like that is one of the benefits of social media because there's so many platforms that you can use. Matter of fact, in my opinion, there's certain songs out there where that became so big because of the way the artists use their social media to promote it. So, and when it comes to film, I believe it can be the same way. I mean, I don't think I've heard of a film that blew up and became a hit based on the post someone put out on social media, but this could be the start.
Yeah, yeah. Like it can definitely help to spread the word more. Like a really good example is when the Winnie the Pooh horror movie was, was being made, I will not forget seeing article after article and people sharing it on Facebook and Instagram. It's because people were caught off guard about that because that was so unusual for the character, and it was a very well known character being turned completely upside down. And yeah, and even when I talked to some of the actors who were in the movie, a lot of them have said, yeah. And I mean, honestly, like all that stuff about people sharing it on, social media and all that, that actually pretty much was our marketing. And it was crazy just knowing that they didn't have to pay a single penny for any of that.
Yeah, and I will say this is that that's definitely is nothing better than free promotion. So that's one thing I'm also thinking about as well. It's like, but for me, for now, for myself, is that I am going to think about promotion as time goes on. But for now, my main focus is just getting it, is just finishing it all, making sure it comes out nice.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's because ultimately, if people are going to watch your product, I mean, people want to have it to be worth their time.
Yeah, and for me, the one thing I will say is that this is something original because, like I said, what inspired me to write this, it was kind of much my adventures growing up as a teenager. Even though I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, this takes place in Atlanta because hey, I'm in Atlanta, it films in Atlanta, so I wanted to make sure that it's the aesthetic it makes sense as far as like where the film takes place since we're shooting here, and I like that it takes place there. But I feel like I feel like the one thing I like about the movie Sinners that I feel like what separates it from majority of films that have been released in recent years is that it was an original work of art. Like it wasn't based on any franchise, it wasn't a sequel, it wasn't based on a book. It just it was just something original. And I really, even though I'm pretty sure he drew inspiration from maybe other films, but overall it was an original work of art. And the one thing I like
Right.
about my film that it is an original work of art. So when people watch this, that they're not going to look at this and think, okay, it's some sequel or some reboot or anything. Like it's an original work of art. And I feel like, hopefully, I feel like we can get back to people being excited about just watching films that are just watching original films.
Right. Yeah. Of course. And I've heard time and time again about so many people saying that about how they wish that there would be more original ideas and all that. And how people are tired of reboots, remakes, sequels, and so on and so forth. And so then in that case, with all that said, with the movie that you are working on, this is definitely going to be right up their alley.
Right, right. But don't get me wrong, man. Like I said, there are certain works of art that I think we said. I think I said this before. Like, if I was to put a time capsule for an overall um, overall franchises that I thought that I would want for future generations to see, there are a couple of reboots, and as far as like original, maybe based on books and novels, but as far as wait, there is one original. Like I said, I want to pick five. I can only think of four right off the bat as far as like movies that I would put in a time capsule for future generations to see. I would say, I mean, not just movies, just movie franchises. I would say, and there's no particular order, but number one, the Harry Potter franchise.
Yeah.
I would say number two, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Number three, the Dark Knight trilogy.
Yeah.
Number four, the Back to the Future trilogy. And I'm trying to come up with a number five, but I can't think of one right off the bat because there were some I would have added if they would have stopped, but I felt like the franchise just kept going. And when it kept going, I felt like it messed up the original works. For instance, like Star Wars, if they would have stopped after the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy and didn't make the sequel trilogy, I would put them up there. If I was to maybe I might also even put the Hunger Games up there if they hadn't kept on, because even as they became huge, the author itself wrote another book, and then next, that book quickly went into production, became a film as well. So for me, it's like it has to be I feel like you have to know when to quit. And that's one thing I liked about those franchises I just mentioned. I felt like all of them knew when to quit. Now they might have made it like, there was these film which were a prequel, but they don't really have anything to do with the Harry Potter franchise. That's just in a completely different um, fran- franchise on its own, just taking place with Dumbledore's younger years. Same thing when you look at The Hobbit. I feel like those kind of like Altas take place long before The Lord of the Rings. I mean, I never even really watched The Hobbit, but based on what I've heard, that's what they tell me. So my point being is that those four franchises that I just mentioned, I feel like they really knew when to quit.
Oh yeah, well, like a good example of a franchise that that a lot of people will say that needs to quit is Fast and the Furious, especially in Fast Nine where they had a car go to outer space. It's like at that point you really are jumping the shark because that's so absurd to have a car go to outer space. And I mean, granted, the argument can be made that that they're self-aware at that point, but it's like it went from regular old street racing to having
Yeah,
a car go to outer space and then bringing characters back from the dead, like who
that's what
clearly.
I was thinking of that too.
Huh?
But you know what? When I was talking to one of my friends a while back, and one thing he said about the franchise, and honestly, looking back, I think he's right. I have to agree with him now. Is that he felt like it was The Rock who messed up that franchise, and the reason why is because when he came in, that's when it became these action adventure films. Because before he came, it really centered on street racing. Like if you look at all of them, the first four all centered on that. But then he came in and it became like this action adventure where he's trying to chase him down. The next thing you know, they join forces and then they do missions together. But don't get me wrong, I felt like The Rock reinvented the franchise and made it what it is now. And in a way, it's really hilarious the stuff that when he first came out because my favorite scene when he was first introduced, he said, "We don't ever, under any circumstances, let them get in the cars." When he said that, I'm sorry, I thought that was hilarious, but it's the truth. But I do feel like hopefully, like me personally myself, when I create a franchise, I hope I don't make the mistakes that they made because I feel like that's one of those mistakes that franchises continue to make. Because when they keep making too many, and you keep bringing back characters from the dead, and it was one of those things where it's like I didn't mind it the first time when it came to Michelle Rodriguez. I understand that because I actually heard that she was in jail at one point or something, and that's probably one of the reasons why I wanted to wait for her to get out so she can be able to come back. That's just what I've heard, so I understand that. But the others, you should have stopped a long time ago.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as her going to jail, I mean, that is completely news to me. So,
That's just what I've heard. I'm not saying it's true, but like I said, don't want to put that out there, Michelle. If you're watching, this is just what I've heard. But or I just heard it was something that prevented her from being in the fourth film for as long as she wanted to. Because I think that maybe it could have been something during filming. That's just what I've heard. But
right.
not like I said. I apologize. I don't want to be able to put down any false information, but that's just what I've heard.
Yeah, and it's also possible that maybe it was family obligations, or it just could have been anything personal in general. So yeah, and the first time they did that with her character, that movie came out back when I was in high school, like with Fast Five, and everybody at school was talking about that. But then what I noticed is that in future movies where they did that again with other characters, people started to roll their eyes, especially I think it was in Fast X where they brought back Gal Gadot when she clearly died in one of the other movies.
That's one of the ones I was talking about. Her and Han. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, I mean, I'm gonna say this. It's like, God bless the dead, but I feel like that franchise was just never the same after we lost Paul Walker. And personally, I somehow think that they probably kept going to be able to show everybody that we can be able to do it without him. But the truth of the matter is, you didn't have to do that. Like there are just certain things like once you lose them, it's okay to just stop and just say like it's just not the same without him.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. And yeah, and a lot of other people like will share that assessment, and I can definitely understand why. It's because of Paul Walker was the face of the entire franchise, and a lot of people have said the same thing about the quality of the films. And now I do understand that that's subjective to opinion, but I mean, in my own opinion, I can really see why, and I will admit it does feel weird to now watch all of the movies afterwards without him, but at the same time, I do understand that the show must go on, and I do get it that that these movies bring in Universal a lot of money, and so that's why that they keep making them, and they probably thought that, well, since it worked so well when we brought back Michelle's character in Fast Five, we can do that again. But what they underestimated is that, you know, it what may have worked one time isn't gonna keep working over and over again. And people rolled their eyes. And especially me when they brought back Hans and Fast Nine, especially with the way how they did it, when they said it was a magic trick, I'm like, that writing is just lazy.
Yes, yes. And the crazy thing about it is that I remember watching this clip on YouTube. I think it's this there's this page called What Culture, and they come up with the top 10 different things. And at one point, they came up with the top 10 films that avoided making obvious mistakes. Now, one of the films they brought up, which actually was a part of, was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And the
Yep.
and one of the things that they said, which I thought was actually very true, that they avoided an obvious mistake was when Gamora came back, she didn't have her memories of previous films, and they never got her memories back. Honestly, I commend them for doing so, and I got a chance to meet the cast of the coolest people you'll ever meet in your life. But I commend them for doing that because that would just, I feel like, would just ruin the film. But instead, they made sure they decided to just keep going forward. She doesn't have her memories, and there was no way she'd be able to get her memories back. So she just kept moving forward, and she decided, and whatever her journey, her character has for if they ever decide to bring her back. And I like the fact that it ended in a way where it's like, it ended the way it started because Star-Lord was kind of like kidnapped from Earth to outer space, and he goes back home to see his, I think, only living relative, which is his grandfather. So it's like it ended the way it started.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And so yeah, and yeah, it's just crazy how all that stuff works. And yeah, and so yeah, about Guardians of the Galaxy 3, there was that whole controversy about some of the tweets that James Gunn did like from 10 or so years ago. But yeah, I guess I'm just curious, like, about your opinion about all that.
Yeah, I do remember hearing about it, but I don't remember exactly what he was tweeting about. But
Right.
what I will say this: whatever he said during that time, if it was offensive, it was mean, then he was wrong for back then. But I just saw something last night that really struck me, a phrase that I'm going to try to make sure I carry on as I move forward in this life. Only a fool shits on something that happened, that only a fool shits on something that's behind them. That's literally and figuratively. For instance, like if you're walking, you trip on something as you're walking forward, okay. But how are you going to be able to trip on something that's behind you? So like I said, only a fool trips on something that's behind them. Now, unless, of course, he still has that same behavior now as he did back then it's understandable to be able to bring back to be able to shine a light on his history. But if that's not who he is today, then we should be able to forgive and move on. Because I got a chance to meet him. I talked to James a few times when I was on set. It's a cool dude. Like I said, I mean, so I don't even remember what he was tweeting about, but whatever it is, I believe that we should just forgive, let it go, and just move on.
Yeah, exactly. And, and that is a perfect way to phrase that. But yeah, uh, how I was going to phrase it, I mean, it means the same thing, but just worded in a different way, is that you can't read the next chapter of your life if you are going back and rereading the last one.
Yes, no, but don't get me wrong. There are certain things that are going to happen in your life where it's like, when it initially happens, and say a few days go by, it's not always one of those things you can just let go. I do feel like sometimes you kind of need your get back. Like for instance,
Yep.
if for instance, like I mean, we all remember 3 years ago at the Oscars when Will slapped Chris.
Yeah.
And now I'm gonna be clear, I personally think it was all staged, but I'm just gonna go along with the narrative that what we saw was real. So let's say what we saw was real. And Chris, he kept his composure. He kept going, presented the award, and for months on end, everybody had an opinion about it. Now that's something like that to happen to, if it had been me, and I'm not saying like I would have reacted the same way. I'm just saying if it would have been me and that happened to me, and I handled myself exactly the way he did, I definitely would also be doing a stand up, talking all about it, getting my get back. And I believe he needed his get back because it's one of those things where it's like, you can't just, certain things you can't just let stand. Like there's certain levels to this thing where it's like you can, for all I know, he's probably forgiven him by now and he's moved past it. But I'm just saying, and you can't, there's one of those things you can't just forgive and that's it. Like sometimes you need your get back.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like, if you make a mistake, yes, you should face the consequences for it. But at the same time, we also have to remember that people are people, and people are not perfect. But what matters most is that when they make that mistake, do they learn?
I would like to think so because I felt like there was, because I remember I was watching interviews, Will just promoted his album and flopped, and I heard that he was saying like pretty much the aftermath, like how things were for him, is that he admitted like even as big a star as he is, he had a hard time getting features because a lot of people didn't even want to work with him because of that. So that just shows you like, but it was one of those things where it's like we all have to eventually, like I said, it's been a few years now. It's one of those things where now it's time to just let it. It's time to just let it go. But don't
It
get me
is.
wrong. But don't get me wrong. I feel like a lot of people certain kind of made themselves look stupid during that time when they were talking about it because what happened? The internet reminded them of certain things that they did, and like I say, you're being so critical, but then you did this. Or there are certain people where they uh, after they spoke how they felt about it, and then something else comes down the line, they made themselves look more like a hypocrite they didn't even realize because I remember you remember Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis,
Yeah.
from that
Yeah.
70s show.
Yep.
Now I don't know what the actor's name is, but he is he's in prison right now, I think for being a pedophile or something like that. He was
Yeah.
on. Now when Will slapped Chris, Ashton and Mila explained like they were there that night, and when Will accepted his award, they did not clap, they didn't stand up because they were against what he did, which understandable. But then about a year later, their co-star from that '70s show is convicted of being a pedophile, and then they put out a message stating like the kind of person he was on set, and that they hope that the courts go easy on him and whatnot. And then guess what? The internet reminded all of them. So you're critical of Will slapping Chris, but you're not critical of the fact that your co-star is a pedophile. You see what I'm saying? Does not make sense.
Yeah.
And then what happened? And guess what happened? Then they had to issue an apology saying, we want to support the victims and whatnot. It's one of those things where it's too little, too late. Personally, me, if I wouldn't have said anything, but if somebody would have asked, I would have just simply said this. I never saw any of that when I was on set, but just because that was my reality doesn't mean it's not the victim's reality. So my heart goes out to everybody involved, and I pray for healing involved. That's all I have to say.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. And and I can imagine that a lot of people who worked on set with that person, I can imagine that they were all shocked, knowing that, oh my goodness, I actually worked with somebody like that, and I came into contact with somebody like that. But a lot of the times, people like that mask it very well, since that they don't just want people to just know what it is that they do, because of course, and then they'll get caught and they can't do what they do. I know that sounds awful, but that's just the psychology of how they work. But there is that saying that what goes around comes around, and you know you reap what you sow.
Yeah, because for me, but don't get me wrong, you can just because you're accused of something horrific like that doesn't mean that you are automatically guilty. Sometimes you can be falsely accused, you maintain your innocence. And
That
I
is true.
and I often say this. Like I actually once said this to a few friends of mine. I always told them, hey, if one of my friends ever got accused of something like that and they maintain their innocence, I'm standing by my friend. Like I've known them for years. Like I said, if they said the situation may happen before we met, I mean, I knew them back then, but the person that I know now, there's no way they could have done something like this. But they swear it never happened back then. I'm standing by my friend. And they say that they're innocent, then I'm standing by them. And if it turns out that I was wrong and they actually end up doing it, well, then you know what? Then I will apologize. But but until then, I'm going to stand by them until the truth is revealed.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that right there perfectly summarizes the whole thing that went on with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, which is a coincidence because I'm pretty sure that happened the exact same year as that infamous situation at the Oscars that we were just talking about with Will Smith and Chris Rock. And so, just coincidence, that happened around the same time. And yeah, and I mean, Johnny Depp, he went through a lot. I mean, knowing that he lost parts of the Caribbean, and unfortunately his reputation also got a major hit because of Amber. But going back to what I say, you reap what you sow, and then it became very transparent that Amber was lying because Amber was saying, "Oh, this was the makeup brand that I used to cover up all my wounds from Johnny Depp." But then that same company, like who made that brand, said, yeah, we didn't start making that up until after, you filed against Johnny Depp." And so then that was very clear evidence that she was lying. And so now, now nobody wants to work with Amber Heard now. And from what I heard, when they were making Aquaman 2, was that WB didn't really want to have her in it, and Amber really had to fight her way back into the movie, and that's why she's not really in it a whole lot. And from what I remember, and you might too, there were a lot of people online, and there were a lot of petitions online saying that they wanted her removed, and that's very understandable why people were signing that. And I feel pretty confident that could be one of the reasons why Aquaman 2 didn't do as well at the box office as the first one did.
Probably because it's one of those cases where when people don't understand, like my film, it may be my film, but guess what? I got so many actors, I got crew members. We all together are all a team, and
Yep.
when we move together, we promote together. We're going to be coming together as a team. And with that sequel, when it came to production and whatnot, I think that the audience realized that they weren't cohesive, they weren't working together as a team, and because of that, it was hard to promote. Like how you gonna be able to promote something? It's like how you gonna be able to promote something when somebody doesn't believe in their own product? That's basically what it is. And as far as Amber Heard, I feel like the biggest thing to take away from Amber Heard and everything that she did, and I'm just gonna go by the way I see it. It's a perfect example of, we heard the term a sore loser, but you can't you can't be a sore winner either. And I believe that's what she was doing, because Amber Heard, because I'm just going to break it down from my point of view. Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, they were married for about 2 years. They divorced. She got $10 million out of her divorce settlement. So I would say round of applause to be married to a big star like that and to get 10 million after only being married for 2 years. That's impressive. Now, what happened afterwards is that she started doing interviews, talking all this trash about him, saying all the stuff that they were doing during their course of their marriage, saying he was abusive, he just no good, whatever the case may be. And Johnny Depp was probably telling her flat out, "Hey, knock it off. It's like you're messing up my money flow. You are assassinating my character. If you keep it up, I'm going to sue." She didn't stop, and then she kept on going. And Johnny Depp was basically like, "You want to go? Okay, let's go." So he sued, and then they go to trial, and pretty much you hear both sides of it. You see her for who she really is, and because of that, in the end, the judge for the most part sided with Johnny Depp, because basically it's like he had to pay her 1.5 million. She had to pay him 10 million. So basically she has to pay him 8.5 million. So all that 10 million she received from the settlement, she's going to have to give about 80% of it back to him. It's one of those cases where it's like, if she just kept her mouth shut, none of this would have happened. It's one of those things, like I said, show me a great loser, I'll show you a wonderful winner. I mean, you have to be gracious when it comes to defeat, but you also have to be gracious when it comes to victory. I'm going to be I'm going to say this, I'm going to be on a game show, can't get too much into it as far as what I'm going to be doing, but I'm going to be on a game show. And I definitely am hoping to go all the way, me and my partner, and if we able to go all the way, and if we're able to win big, like I've been on a game show before, I'm not going to be, bragging about or anything like that. Like, I'm going to be a gracious winner. I'm going to be like thankful, like we did this. And I feel like for most people, and I hope when people watch this, I hope they understand. No one likes a sore loser, but no one likes a sore winner either. So, the same way you got to be gracious in defeat, you got to be gracious in victory.
Exactly, yeah. And that reminds me of like a lot of stories, like of people who have succeeded in life. Whenever they had their downfall, the one thing they always have in common with their downfall, it always has been their ego.
Yes, and I think there's this one book that I would tell everybody they need to read. It's like the 48 Laws of Power.
Yeah,
and I think that's one of the laws, like, not to have an ego when it comes to victory and defeat. Another law that I like the most is that you can't come off too clean. Because I always say to myself, one thing people like about me is that I'm always myself. But I always tell people all the time, know me is to love me. But guess what? I have my days, and you can clear. And like there's certain moments where it's like you're gonna clearly see, my negative traits, because I'm not even ashamed to admit that I have plenty of those, as we all do. But overall, the point being is that I'm just showing everybody that I'm not too clean. I'm showing my flaws, and also I tell people all the time, it's like, do you really want a person who's always smiling, who's always happy all the time, like like you're a Stepford wife or something? Like that's not normal. It's like you gotta, like I said, you gotta have your moments where you're angry. You gotta have your moments when you're sad. It's like you gotta be able those moments where it's like you're grieving when there's a tragedy. Like you can't always be smiling. It's like you gotta be able to have. You have to have your happy times. You have to have the good times and the bad times. It's like, because I always say it all the time. Like, there is good and evil in all of us. It's like when you're born, I always say you got the God in you and you got the devil in you. And like I said, if you are reaching for the light, you're surrendering to the God. You're reaching to the dark, you're surrendering to the devil in you. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. We get tempted by the devil all the time. We all do. But you just gotta be the best thing we can is that we have to be able to make the right decisions and try to keep the devil at bay and be able to push more towards the light. Because I'm gonna say this, I don't really believe there is such thing as a saint, but there are certain people out there who, the way they carry themselves, they come pretty close.
Oh yeah, exactly. And and nobody likes somebody who is going to come across as a know-it-all, since that since that definitely will damage all of your relationships that you have. And so yeah, and I mean, it's always okay to say that you don't know, and and then when you say you don't know, that actually will open up more doors for you. And funny how you mentioned the 40 Laws of Power, because I too have read that book. And yeah, and that book also says to absorb information like a sponge. And it also says to guard your, it says that your reputation is everything, guarded with your life. And going back to the whole thing with Will Smith, that was one of the laws that he broke, is that as soon as he went up on stage and then he slapped Chris Rock, that was one of the laws that he broke, like was damaging his reputation. And I mean, granted, from what I can tell, I don't know the full story, but from what I can tell is that Will Smith is trying to work on bettering that, you know, uh, that component of his life. And I definitely give him props for that. And but yeah, now he has to face the consequences for that, and that's on him. And it just really sucks knowing that he finally won an Oscar, and now that's overshadowed simply because of the fact that he made that mistake. And and even with Amber Heard, I mean, Amber Heard clearly broke that law at like about guard your reputation, because now nobody wants to work with her now. And again, I mean, similar to with like with Will Smith, I mean, Amber Heard, she I mean, Will Smith, now, say for argument's sakes, now, was it staged or not? I don't know. But let's say that it was not staged. I do understand why he would do it. It's because he was just wanting to defend his wife. And now, granted, I know that the whole thing with cheating, that aside, I do understand his intention was to defend his wife. Granted, he could have went about it in a better way, yes, but I do understand why that he did it. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's okay, just to go hit somebody, but I do understand why that he did it. But he still hurt his reputation. But Amber Heard, though, is a completely, wow, yes, she did hurt her reputation like what Will Smith did, but Amber Heard, she knew that she was lying, and that she thought that she could get away with all that, and that's not okay.
Well, here's what separates Amber Heard from Will Smith. I say all the time, there's levels to this thing called stardom. You got stars, you got superstars, you got megastar.
Yep.
Star is somebody who's famous but not a household name. You kind of have to be familiar with their work to know who they are. Amber Heard is a star. A superstar is someone who is a household name. You don't necessarily have to be familiar with all their work, but you are familiar with some of their work.
Yep.
A megastar is bigger than the genre. They're beyond a household name. Everyone knows who they are. You'd be living under a rock to not know who they are. Will is a megastar. And that's one of the reasons why I think that it was staged. Because here's what I tell people all the time. When you assess a situation, you have to first look at the facts. We look at the facts first, then we get to our opinions. So let's actually analyze what happened that night. When Chris came out to present the award, he said a joke about Jada. When he said that joke, Will was laughing, but then noticed Jada didn't like it, so he did what he did. And then Chris kept his composure after he got slapped, and he kept going and presented the award. Will later accepts his award on stage crying, knowing that he just effed up big time. And for months on end, everybody was talking about it. That is what happened. Those are the facts. Now, here's my opinions. The reason why I believe it was staged. I believe the reason why it was staged is because what we really saw was that Chris came out there presenting the award and he said that joke, and that was supposed to be Will's cue to go on stage. But Will forgot that was his cue because the joke was funny. And the look, if you actually look back, the look Jada was giving him was that look of, that's your cue. Then he does what he does. And then I paused it a couple of times. I'm like, wait a minute. It kind of looked like Chris moved his head before he got slapped because he knew it was coming. And then everybody commended him for keeping his composure. I'm like, you're right. He did a good job. Matter yet, he didn't do a good job. He did a great job. As a matter of fact, he handled it perfectly, as if he knew it was coming. And then when Will steps to the word crying, I'm like, he's a phenomenal actor. He knows how to cry out to you. So I'm like, that's why I'm staying and I'm just gonna say it, until I find evidence that proves otherwise, I'm standing by what I believe. I think it was staged. That's just that's my reasoning why. Now, don't get me wrong, unless if it really wasn't, it does break my heart. I'm a huge fan of both, and I always watch the Oscars. I watch every movie that's nominated every year. I watch. One of the things I was excited about that year, I was excited to see Will win his first Oscar. So yes, when that situation happened, it definitely messed up the entire moment. But like I said, a part of me thinks that it was staged, because remember, when it comes to also, like I said, Will's a mega star. Like a mega star is somebody who's solidified. No matter what they do, they can never be canceled unless they are dead or go to jail. They can't be canceled. It's like they will always find a way to recover. It's like his movie he did after, well, the first movie he released after that happened was Emancipation, and basically it flopped, but it's going to gain a cult following as the years go along. But as far as the first film he did after that was Bad Boys 4. Bad Boys 4 blew up. My point being is, we all knew he was going to bounce back. So that's why I still feel like it was. I still feel like it was staged, because I feel like Will knows. He's like, okay, if we do this, I'm gonna suffer, but guess what? I can be able to bounce back from this. Like if it had been anybody else, I don't believe they would have been able to bounce back.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it shows a lot of resilience, like on Will's end, knowing that he was able to bounce back from that, considering that there were memes after memes about it. And I'm not gonna lie, some of those memes that people made definitely were pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie, just seeing some of that creativity about it. Like probably the funniest meme I saw was when they were making fun of Avengers Endgame, I like Thanos was Chris Rock, and then how Tony Stark was Will Smith, and then how just right before he snapped his fingers, he's like, "Keep my damn voice out of your fucking mouth," and then he snapped.
Yeah, I got
funny.
I got no, that one. I don't think I ever saw that one. But you know what? Also, another thing I think about that I feel like a lot of people don't think about. Did you watch Chris Rock stand up after it happened?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
And what did you think about it?
Yeah, it's no surprise knowing that that he was doing stand up about it, and I mean, considering that it was a really hot topic at that time, and so then therefore it helped him to bring in more revenue. So I do understand economically why that he did it. I don't really remember everything that he said word for word about what he said, but I mean, business wise, it made sense. And one of the other arguments that I've heard for why that it probably could have been staged, was the fact that the Oscars views were not as high before then, as they were in 2022 when it happened. Now that's a very compelling argument, business wise. That definitely does make sense. But at the same time, since that I've never met Will Smith or Chris Rock or any of that, I mean, I can't say for certain if it was staged or not. I mean, I do understand both sides. It's just for me, I am neutral about it. But yeah, I definitely do understand where both sides are coming from about it. And yeah, I've heard really good arguments on both ends.
Yeah, because I'm gonna say this, like I said, I remember watching the stand up, and like everybody, we all knew he was gonna talk about it, but I personally think, like everybody else, I thought it was going to be hilarious. I thought it was going to be one of the funniest stand-ups I had ever seen him ever do. I thought we'd been talking about it for months on end, but when it came out, it wasn't that funny to me. I mean, the funniest part was where the part I remember was when he was talking about how he got his daughter kicked out of school. That was the only part that I thought was really funny. But as far as the part where he actually talked about getting slapped, the problem I had with it is that you wait a year to talk about it, only to say what everybody else has already been thinking. He basically said, your wife had an affair, everybody made fun of you, but who did he hit? made it. Somebody he knew he could be. And I'm like, Chris, isn't that what we've all been thinking about from the beginning? I'm like, you've been waiting a year. That's what you say. That's what makes me think that it was staged. Because I feel like, and also as great as a comedian as he is, no, you could have came up with so many better jokes. I'm like, no, like I said, well, and I'm gonna say this. It's one of those things that I feel like we'll probably never know. But for me, I'm standing by it. I believe it was staged. It was like O.J. Simpson. It's like we will never fully know if he really did it or not. But it's one of those things that it's we're always gonna be wondering in our heads. But for me, I'm standing by what I believe until I find evidence that proves otherwise. I think it was staged.
Yeah, and I mean, I definitely do understand why you feel that way, and I also give you props, like by also acknowledging that if there is evidence, like that'll contradict it, that you will change your mind, and I mean, that definitely takes a lot of humility. And, I mean, so yeah. I definitely give you major props on that, and yeah, and when Bad Boys 4 came out, this was one of the things that I was saying when that film came out, because sorry, I cannot talk today. Inevitable, you know what I mean. So yeah, I knew that people were going to bring up the whole situation with the Oscars when the trailer went online on YouTube and Facebook and all that. I knew people down in the comments were going to be mentioning the whole Oscar thing. I mean, it was bound to happen. There are some things we can control and some things we just can't. But, but I also was glad to see that some people, including myself, has said, look, we get it what Will Smith did, but, but at the end of the day, it was years ago now. And, life does, life does continue on.
Yeah, because I do remember at the time. Well, I'm gonna say this. I do remember watching Bad Boys 4, and I didn't even realize it at first. The scene where Martin was slapping Will a couple of times. That was obviously referencing him slapping Chris at the Oscars. I didn't even realize it at the time. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a scene where he's like, what? He's like, what? And I'm like, he's like that was his way of referencing it. And also it was his way of making fun of himself. But I do remember, I think, what's his name? I think it was Stephen A. Smith and Rob Schneider were saying things. Like, I think Rob Schneider was saying that Will's really an asshole. He's not really the nice guy people think he is, and pretty much saying not to even watch the movie. And I say, Rob Schneider, just shut up. Like, personally, you're coming off like a hater. And personally, I think you're jealous because you don't like the fact that that it happened. And Will, at the time, he got away with it. He still won the Oscar, and he's still loved. Nobody cared. And then Stephen A. Smith was saying stuff. Will needs to be able to answer for the Oscars and whatnot even after Bad Boys 4 and all that. And I would say, Stephen A. Smith, shut the F up forever. Will don't owe nobody any explanation except for the dude he slapped. That's number one. And number two, he did an interview about it 2 or 3 years ago when he was promoting that movie Emancipation, and he made it clear. He said, while it's no excuse, basically I was dealing with a lot these past several years, and it all came out that night. Not saying it's right, but I do apologize. I apologized to Chris more times than he probably even should have. But the point being is, he already addressed it. It's one of those things where they're just jealous because they don't like the idea that he's back on top. Like I tell people all the time, when it comes to scandals, like I've never been in a scandal. I hope to never be in one. But I will say this, when it comes to any scandal, the one thing we all know is the same thing, is that when it first happens, it's big, but guess what? People will eventually move on. It's going to eventually blow over. You address it, and then afterwards, you just move on and figure out a way to get to I would say to figure out how to turn things around, no matter what the case may be. That's pretty much it. So it's like he went through a scandal, but guess what? It's over. It's over now. It's been 2 years. Like, name one scandal that happened so many years ago, but we still talk about it like it just happened yesterday, and you can't.
Right, yeah. And I mean, people may have brought up the whole thing with OJ, here and then, but I mean, but for the most part, though, mostly everybody had moved on, though.
I would hope so, but there are still people I know who still are not over the verdict. But like I remember being, I remember being a little kid. I remember hearing about everything and all that. And then when I actually watched I watched the mini series, The People versus O.J. Simpson. Did you get a chance to watch it?
I don't believe so, no.
Get a chance, you should actually watch it. It was brilliant. It was very compelling, and it also gives you an idea about what was going on during that time. Now, I always say this: American Crime Story. I've only watched There's like 3 seasons altogether, but I've only watched the first season, which was the one with O.J. Simpson. And the show is pretty much about covering a different famous crime that took place during the course of American history, and each season also covers a certain topic. Now, the first season was The People versus O.J. Simpson. That obviously was to shine a light on race. The second season, I watched the first episode, but I just couldn't get into it anymore because I didn't want that. It just was too dark. I didn't want it in my spirit. The second season was the assassination of Gianni Versace. Now, that season was to shine a light on homophobia. Now, the third season was impeachment, which shined a light on the whole Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky scandal. Now, obviously, that season was to shine a light on politics. So, see, each one is shining a light on a different subject through each famous crime. But for me, like I said, it's like there's supposed to be another season supposed to be in development, and there's been different talks about which crimes they're going to cover or situations. Like at one point they said they're supposed to be covering Studio 451. At one point they're supposed to talk about Hurricane Katrina, which even though was it a crime? Was Hurricane Katrina a crime? No, but there was a lot of crime going on during that time because of the government's failed attempt to assist. But we shall see.
Oh yeah, certainly. And and ultimately we don't always know what's going to happen with life, but at the same time, if we always knew what was going to happen, I mean, life would be pretty boring. So yeah, and so yeah, but yeah, I think that about does her. But yeah, is there anything else that you would like to share? Well, like say, besides the projects you've said you've been working on, is there anything else that you would want my audience to be aware of? Like say for any of your projects, like do they have like an Indiegogo that they can go donate or share to?
No, but you know what? But guess what? You can always, if you want, I can send my Cash App and they can be able to donate that way. And I can send it to you afterwards, and you can just put the link maybe in the bio when you when you put the video out. But as far as that's pretty much, well, also I will say this: I am still looking for actors. So any actors who might be interested, they can also just send me a message via my Instagram. My Instagram is official_LK513. You can put my Instagram in the description as well. But aside of that, I definitely want to. I once said this about my dream role. I think I have a couple of dream roles now. So for the future, like I said, if it ever happens, I can be able to say I set into existence right here. But one of my dream roles is like a cat and mouse where I'm running for the government, trying to prove my innocence, after being framed. Like I would definitely say like a Harrison Ford, The Fugitive type role, because The Fugitive is one of my favorite films of all time. Like anytime it comes on, I can stop what I'm doing and I can just start watching it. And another dream role that I'm kind of starting to have in light of this the political climate that we had in these past several years, I wouldn't mind playing a president at one point in a movie. Reason why is because I just can't help but feel like it'd be a fun role to play. Now, me personally, myself, I would never want to ever truly get into politics. I can never see myself getting into all of that.
Right.
As much as we talk about how entertainment is cutthroat, I believe politics is probably 10 times worse. But I still can't help but feel like, just playing the president would be such a fun role to play. Like, I just watched the G20 movie with Viola Davis. She's playing the president. I thought she killed it in that. I obviously think of some of my favorite fictional president. Well, my favorite fictional president of all time, of course, is Harrison Ford, Air Force One, James Marshall. So, and I would definitely want to be able to play a fictional president one day, bring that to life, and maybe go down as one of the favorite fictional presidents of all time and be an inspiration too. So those are pretty much my dream roles.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and well, I certainly wish you the best of luck on your endeavors about that. And and you really only fail only when you stop trying. I mean, so yeah, and so if you set your mind to it, truly anything is possible.
Right, right. Thank you once again, Eric. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
Definitely can't
certainly.
wait for this to come out.
Oh yeah, certainly. But yeah, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, and yeah, you and I definitely will keep in touch.
Gotcha.
All righty. See you later.
See ya.